Good evening. This is Entropy with lunaticoutpost.com LOP Radio. My guest tonight is Diana Highnight. Hello, Diana.
Hi, Entropy. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, pretty good. Excited to be here on with you.
Members were really pushing for you to do an interview. I'm glad you could join us. I understand that you are a writer. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I've written a couple of novels and I'm working a couple other things, some nonfiction, another novel. Yeah, I got a couple of books out there.
Nonfiction or are they fiction?
My two books are fantasy novels, actually. First book, Moonsword, and the second book, a sequel, of Clouds, came out in 2004 and 2005.
Can you tell me about your books?
Yeah, sure. They're basically a fantastical exploration of my own gender identity in a Lord of the Rings type of atmosphere. A prince um, finds out about a druid prophecy that requires him to be turned into a incarnation of the moon goddess to save the world from an evil demon. So it kind of mirrored a lot of what I was going through my transition because, as you probably know, I am a post-operative transsexual.
What brought you into the conspiracy universe? What got you into websites such as lunaticoutpost.com?
Originally, I was researching for another book I'm writing, not a fantasy story, that had a lot of conspiracy as a central theme. And I started to research that. And honestly, right around the same time, I started hearing this British band, Muse. And I started paying attention to the lyrics of their songs, which, if you're familiar with Muse at all, is
I am.
all conspiracies and fake alien invasions and all the classic stuff. And I started to really explore from those 2 points. Um, and I did a lot of research on the so-called Illuminati.
Hmm.
And really, that's what got me there. I went to, the other big place
Right.
and quickly got banned. And before I did, I made friends with a certain British sorcerer who I'm sure we all know, and one Richard Eldritch, and he told me about our beloved LOP. I and I came and I really found the people were great, the topics were awesome, and still it's like crack. I can't keep away from it. Not that I have a problem with crack, mind you, but
From what I'm told, crack is pretty bad.
that's what I hear. Don't know. Never tried it. But Lunatic Outpost is awesome.
Oh, I agree with you. Do you approach the forum as a form of entertainment or as a source of information? Do you get a lot of ideas for your stories from what you read online?
I would say all of that. Yeah, I love it for entertainment because there's some fun threads. You get the news before anybody else does. A lot of good science news, and yeah, you research a lot of things you would not encounter in the mainstream media, and you get to express your opinion on subjects that most people really aren't comfortable talking about and really don't even want to think about. It's all of those things. It's entertainment, it's education, it's a little soapbox and now and again just talk about stuff that you can't talk about with other people.
Has it changed your political philosophy or any of your ideology?
The more I have looked into the conspiracy world, the more I find myself becoming an anarchist. That is to say, not someone who loves chaos, but someone who believes that leaders are our problem, that we can cooperate without coercion. And I think that's the goal, frankly, of human existence politically is to cooperate without the need of coercive systems. So that's something I've definitely has been honed and sharpened through my readings there on the conspiracy websites.
Before you started reading conspiracy websites and looking into alternative media, how would you describe your political philosophy at that preamble?
I was something of a libertarian, I guess. You know, I probably was more fiscally conservative and, you know, socially liberal. I think, frankly, like most Americans in the majority, we tend to be. The very moderate would probably be the way to describe it. I certainly didn't love the two-party system, but I certainly did not realize the extreme predicament it has placed us in as a nation. Um, uh, you know, basically, it's obvious once you study the alternative media and conspiracy that essentially the two parties are two clubs that take turns holding power and eroding freedoms from one end of the spectrum or the other. They're not our friends. Uh, the government is not our friend. They're not here to help us. They're here to help themselves to our money. And unfortunately, through the lobbying system, uh, large corporations and banking interests, rather banking interests, have taken over complete attention and representation of our legislator and legislature, rather, executive and judicial branches, as they're completely corrupt. Uh, Even George Washington, in his farewell address, warned us about the dangers of political parties because they put the party's welfare over the nation's welfare. And that should tell you all you really need to know right there.
Do you believe that both parties have the same goals, or are they trying to do what their platforms say they are? Can you give me an example of how two-party politics has damaged American society?
Well, certainly. Well, most recently, we can see the gridlock caused entirely by just R's and D's that shut down the government. Those people were supposed to be there to represent us, and instead they just held out and threw temper tantrums. Specifically, um, social programs, whereas worthy, uh, they are all about taking somebody's money to give it to somebody else.
Do you,
Uh,
do you feel that
yeah,
the two-party system has pushed us away from Republican democracy?
yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Is we've gotten away from basically the interests of the people towards just the interest of special interests. And it's very easy if you have two parties. All you got to do is buy some people on either side. Whereas if they're all individuals and we don't have parties, and we all just run for what we believe, and the ideas would be what would matter. I think we'd be in a lot better shape than you know, party platforms, which really take away choice. And most Americans like stuff from both parties, and most Americans hate things from both parties. Uh, Reminds me of a joke. I'm going to tell it. It's probably not going to go over well, but you've probably heard it. How can you tell when a politician is lying? His mouth is moving. And it's the problem. Our politics are completely corrupted, and they use the two-party system to crush anyone who wants to, you know, essentially crash the political party, if you will. And they're the gatekeepers with all the money in the elections. If you don't have money, you're not going to get very far. If you don't toe the party lines, you're not going to get very far. For example, in New Jersey, where I live, our Governor Chris Christie
Yes.
um, has recently done all kinds of gymnastics over the gay marriage issue. Uh, Frankly, Christie's a moderate and he could care less about gay marriage, but he wants to run for president. He wants the Republican money and he wants the conservative vote. So, despite what he almost certainly believes, he's doing what the party wants, not what he feels to be right. Likewise, with medical marijuana legalization, which has been passed in New Jersey for 4 years now, he has slowed implementation, not because he believes that sick people shouldn't get relief, but because he's trying to look good for the National Republican Party. And in that way, things that even he believes in, or at least doesn't care about, he comes out as strongly against. That's part of the danger of political parties, I think, and it's kind of a dictatorship over ideas, and it locks us in this status quo, which is completely unacceptable, in my opinion.
I see. How do you feel that the two-party system has shaped our news media?
Well, I would say that these same people who bought both of the parties bought the news media. I believe there are 5 companies now that own virtually all major media in the United States. And they also own the political parties. So we know what they want us to know. Uh, True public debate is dead, or frankly, is held on places like Lunatic Outpost. Uh, they may be the last bastions of honest civil discourse, free of propaganda, and even we all know that there are some threads that pop up now and again that are all about propaganda. So I think the corruption that took our government, took our media, and ultimately aims to take our very freedoms and the essence of our lives.
I am what you would call a news junkie. I try to get my news from every source all the time. And one thing that you hit on that's really bothered me is I notice when I watch TV news, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whoever, it's almost like 80% of their coverage is a commercial for this two-party debate. And there's no other voices being expressed, at least in the mainstream media. You said that you consider yourself to be a modern kind of anarchist.
Yeah, in the true roots of that idea, meaning anarchists aren't against rules and regulations;
Uh-huh.
they're against the coercive enforcement of rules and regulations.
I see.
Essentially, a society based on ideal anarchism would be one where people formed cooperative groups. And if you didn't want to cooperate with the group, well, you don't have to belong to that group. Maybe there's some other group that's doing something you like better. It's not essentially, a shakedown. Let's face it, governments are essentially geographical protection rackets, essentially gangland protection rackets that you're born into without choice and really without recourse. As I believe it was Mark Twain said, if voting really made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it.
How long have you been involved in political activism?
Back in 2007, I started to form a political party called the Radical Moderates, which essentially was designed to remove party. It would be an unparty uh, We would not talk to lobbyists or corporate interests. You would only deal with individuals. Lawyers would not be allowed in the party as or to run for elective office. They could join the
Hmm.
party, but that's a conflict of interest. It basically put limits, voluntary limits. If you belong to the party, you're expressing a willingness for term limits. You know, unfortunately, I figured out 25 ways to game my own system, and I worked really hard on it. And that made me start to realize that it's a really tricky problem. And any type of coercion, which is forcing you to do something at gunpoint, which is what the government essentially does. If you don't pay us taxes, we're going to lock you away. If you don't, we draft you and you refuse to go kill these people over here, we tell you you're bad people, we're going to lock you away. So it's coercion, it's force.
Hmm.
Uh, I believe it was Gerald Ford that said, any government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take away everything you have.
A recent post on Lunatic Outpost, it may have been an echo of a posting from the past, showed a clip of a politician basically answering, a lady's question about why do you feel America is the greatest country in the world, and it got into the discussion of freedom. How do you view the freedom of American citizens in contrast to the rest of the nations on Earth?
Well, I've only been to a few of the other nations on Earth. Um, I can tell you probably better what I feel about American freedom, say 30 years ago or 20 years ago, as opposed to American freedom today. That's probably a comparison I can make. And we were just simply more free. You could do what you wanted without your neighbors calling the police on you. If you were digging a hole in your backyard, the municipality wasn't going to come away and charge you with $5,000 to fill your hole in. Um, they weren't looking to shake you down in every possible way they could. They weren't watching your every move. Obviously, in my opinion, we made some bad choices after 9/11. People were afraid. I get that. But we did exactly what Benjamin Franklin warned us not to do, which, of course, Franklin famously said, he who gives up essential liberty for temporary security deserves neither. And I tend to agree with them. Frankly, uh, the Patriot Act was a huge mistake.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's really led us to the predicament we're in now with, the revelations that Snowden's given us. Uh, they're spying on everybody all the time, and it doesn't matter who you are. At least, I guess there's something to know that we all kind of, figured that in the conspiracy world, but now mainstream people are starting to see it too. I think people are starting to be afraid now. And I think people are starting to become afraid, where you weren't afraid of the government back in the day. You weren't afraid of the police. If you had a problem, you'd go to the police, you'd go to the government. Uh, Nowadays, it's call the police are just as likely to shoot you in the face. That's just the sad truth. I mean, no disrespect, of course, to any police officers listening. I'm sure you're wonderful people, but there are some bad apples. Um, and so it is with freedom today. We have huge bureaucratic organizations designed basically to be our prison wardens. And it's a tragic state of a situation. And personally, I'm shocked and appalled at my fellow Americans and myself have put up with it for so long. I'm hoping that some kind of change is possible. Frankly, I'm not optimistic.
Do you believe it's too late to reverse the trend towards America becoming a police state?
Honestly, I think it may be. That will not stop me, however, from doing whatever I can in my power to prevent that from happening. I don't know what that is, but I have a very active brain and I'm constantly working on ideas. Probably none of them will help. I'm hoping some other people have some ideas that'll help. I hate to be so pessimistic, but it's the hour is very late for American freedom. I'd say the doomsday clock for freedom is reading 11:55. Um, I hate to say that. And maybe we need to lose our freedom before we appreciate it. Maybe that's what it'll take.
A
I
lot.
hope not.
I hope you're wrong. Um, a lot of influential leaders and a lot of media likes to push the idea that freedom is about what you can do with the money you earn. I'm not objecting to that idea. I'm not endorsing it. What are your thoughts on that?
Freedom has nothing to do with the money you earn or being allowed to express it in a consumerist country or society, let's be fair. Um, Freedom is the right of the individual to go about their business as long as they're not bothering someone else. So I have a lot of problems with simple prohibitions on anything for adults. Frankly, not letting people smoke pot is not freedom. Not letting people do this or that or this or that. I mean, look at the laws. Every year, there's more laws. They're not making laws to let people do more stuff. They're making laws to make people do less stuff. That's a loss of freedom. Sure, I can buy all kinds of cool stuff and apps and phones and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm a prisoner in my own country, and it's not freedom. To me, I hope that makes sense.
When our last president was in office, George W. Bush, did you consider yourself a progressive then or a Democrat?
No, I did not. I still consider myself a moderate. However, I was horrified at the early police state signs that we exhibited under George W. Bush. So no, I just certainly wasn't progressive. I run a business as well, so I'm absolutely a fiscal conservative in that sense. Um, but no, I Bush started us on this road, and I was no fan. And I was on the forums, generally writing forums back then,
Mhm.
calling him a dictator and a tyrant. Boy, and then we got Obama.
Yeah,
And
yes. How do you feel about him?
well, the words dictator and tyrant seem to fit even better than the last guy. Uh, this guy, thinks that with a flick of his pen, uh, he can make up, down, and left, right, but it's not the case. The crazy executive orders, uh, the outrageous overreach of the intelligence communities. Uh, there's a huge disconnect between the people and their government, and it's just getting further and further. I mean, it's supposed to be a government for the people, not a government at the people. Uh, and that's the way it seems. And frankly, I had a lot of hope. I have to admit, I voted for President Obama the first time around. Just looking to get away from the war, the constant state of war, the atrocities at Gitmo. Maybe get the world to like us a little more again, and uh, I was bitterly disappointed and frankly shocked and ashamed at the direction we've started to come.
You mentioned consumerism
Yeah.
and the rampant American consumerism. Do you believe that that has hurt our collective um, senses as the American people?
Absolutely. I mean, we're totally raised and immersed in it, so it seems natural to us. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, consumerism is all about using up as much of your resources as you can as quickly as possible to make as much junk as you can, to make as much profit as you can, as quickly as you can. It's all about short-term profit motive for the suppliers. And the consumers, unfortunately, it goes hand in hand with psychological manipulation and advertising, such that the very core of our being is an empty spot that we feel we need to fill with stuff. And it's not going to end good. It's just not. We can't just willy-nilly use our resources as quickly as possible to make people rich and to give people the illusion of happiness, because that's all we have anymore. Things will never make us happy. uh, Relationships with people and nature, that can make you happy, but your iPhone 9 or whatever isn't really going to do it. That's the way I feel about it anyway.
If you could solve the problem that America faces with becoming a more surveillance based, um, I guess, police state, for lack of a better term, how would you do it? Would consumerism be your first obstacle to overcome, or would you reform education? Does it take a combination of things, or would it be a grassroots effort to change what happens in our bureaucracy behind closed doors?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, education is obviously going to have to change. They're going to have to bring back teaching critical thinking, so people will remember that they really have to question authority, question everything. So I think education is a big part of it, to make people want to turn away from consumerism. Uh, that's a hard sell. It really is,
Hmm.
because it's all about realizing what's important within ourselves as individuals. I I don't know. I see, like, frankly, the people running like lemmings towards a cliff. I really do. I think consumerism ends when we get a nasty wake up call, when we run out of something that we need to live. That's probably how consumerism ends, or when we just the grid goes down, it never goes back up, and we can't make stuff anymore. That's probably what consumerism will die. Boy, I'm a little pessimistic today. I apologize for that, but
I understand.
I don't know, a lot of optimism these days.
There's been a rebirth of political movements to oppose the mainstream two-party way of doing things in recent history. We've had the Tea Party, we've had Occupy Wall Street, we've had Anonymous, WikiLeaks, which is, of course, more of an international kind of thing going on. What do you think keeps these movements from being able to be effective?
Well, it's relatively easy. Once they gain in popularity, they are infiltrated.
Yes.
They are either directed towards one of the other, two parties in this country. For example, the Republicans infiltrated the Tea Party, the conservative Republicans in particular, and basically made it just a type of republicanism. As for Occupy Wall Street, there was some attempt to turn it into kind of a democratic movement,
Hmm.
uh, but I think what they did was go for infiltrate and neutralize instead, which is the other way to go.
Right.
Um, you ridicule something, you don't give any press coverage, you joke about dirty hippies on the news, and you kill another movement. Anonymous, of course, well, we all know that they're evil hackers and cyber terrorists, right? That's what we're told from our
Terrorists, yes.
yeah. Um, so once again, neutralized. They may be effective, but to a lot of people, they're evil anarchists who want nothing more to destroy America, and they can't because we've already destroyed America. We've let it be destroyed. Maybe there's time to turn it around. And the only way that's going to happen is if people really start talking honestly to each other. And if we do it, even though we know people are listening, we say what we feel and we speak the truth that's in our hearts, and maybe there's way out of it.
You mentioned that you had an interest in scientific stuff too, as far as the forum goes, and there's been a lot of things in education that we were discussing. I call it the dumbing down, where different political groups, for whatever reason, says you can't teach this in a classroom, you can't teach that in a classroom. How do you view science? What's your opinion on it, and how do you think that affects us as a country?
Well, I think the scientific method was the single greatest human achievement in that we developed a way to systematically test ideas and learn things on a really massive scale. You really couldn't do that. It was hit or miss before we had the scientific method. And I think science has helped us immensely. Uh, However, that said, in the last, I don't know, few years, science become, as you point out, very political. Climate change has become very political. Obviously, evolution and creationism. It's all very political. Uh, so I think once again, special interests may have hijacked our science. Certainly people claim that energy companies are quick to clamp down on, new inventions for, better propulsion, better cars, new energy sources. You're always hearing that stuff's clamped down immediately. So I think that when groups and entities get political power, they can influence science. And let's face it, if people don't learn about things, if things are kept out of textbooks and out of the media, then you don't know them. And you can't really learn about stuff that you don't know exists. So I think in that sense, science has become a tool for other people's agendas. Pure science, uh, I think to some degree is still, it's closer to philosophy probably than the type of science that we have nowadays. Uh, Back in the day, probably one of the last guys to know everything, because today everything's so specialized, but was a guy named Dr. John Dee. Uh, and Dr. John Dee in 1564 wrote a book called Monas Hieroglyphica, in which basically he presented a picture of a unified particle that makes up all of reality. It's self-replicating. It's basically a charged fractal vortex, which is really equivalent to the concept of holons today, and really helps explain the concept that you hear of the holographic universe and things like that. So Dee was really the last guy to know everything. Nowadays, you know a little bit of science and a little bit, and I think the compartmentalization of science has further really isolated people from the sciences, and I think it's hindered the sciences themselves. You don't have people like John Dee or you know the professor from Gilligan's Island. Nobody knows a lot about everything. Part of that's the function of there being maybe just too much to know. But once again, nobody's really bringing the sciences together. I think that's where the future of science is as well. The integration of specialties, bringing them together. I think that could be something exciting and can lead to some exciting ideas. Uh, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Would you consider yourself religious or spiritual, occultist?
Well, I would say I'm a spiritual person. I am, by definition, an occultist, meaning I am interested and study things that are hidden and secret. Um, it is no great secret that I have practiced ritual magic and shamanism. However, that said, I adhere to no specific philosophy. I personally believe that belief is the death of intellect, and as soon as you lock in to really believe in something, you stop asking questions about everything else. So I would define myself probably as a student of the universe. I'm kind of a pantheist in that I believe that we are the perceptive organs of the universe, and it's all one big thing, and we're all part of it. Um, so that's certainly nothing orthodox. Just lots of ideas from 49 years of pondering things.
Out of all the mysteries of the universe, what intrigues you the most?
Nowadays, I am really intrigued by simulation theory,
All right.
which basically states that sooner or later, we're going to get good enough, our scientists and technicians, to build models and simulations so accurate that you will not be able to tell their simulations, sort of in a virtual reality world, just virtual worlds that are so perfect in interactions that they are indistinguishable from the real world. Now, there's something in science called the totalitarian principle,
Mm-hmm.
which basically means that if something can happen according to the laws of physics or science, then it must happen. Therefore, the intriguing part of simulation theory is it probably has already happened. And the universe that we live in is very likely a simulation or possibly a recording of some type. This fits in with the concept of a holographic universe, and scientists at the Fermi Labs are actually building a holometer to determine if the universe has holographic properties. Further, a lot of the spooky effects of quantum mechanics, like entanglement, are easily explainable by the simulation theory. Interestingly, and further intriguing, is scientists recently discovered that in string theory, which is a theory designed to explain the physics of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
that they have found what appears to be self-correcting code, rather like what would
Yes.
appear in a large computer program. Now, these things, some people say, well, that takes the meaning out of our world. It really doesn't. In fact, it can provide great deal of meaning, and I think some mystics have possibly gotten us over the ages. The thing is, if this is a simulation, then it's very possible that the world outside this one could be a simulation. They could be nested simulations going, who knows? It could be, turtles and elephants standing on turtles and elephants all the way down, as the Hindu tradition, kind of indicates. It's possible. Scientists have said the way to really test if this world is a simulation is if they can build a good enough simulation, they'll be able to compare the properties. That does beg the question then that someone else may have done the same thing, and therefore, as I say, there's nested, potentially infinite simulations. It's really it's kind of freaky. It's kind of trippy. I like it.
How does the theory of a simulated universe relate to, let's say, the theory of a multiverse? Does it contradict it? Does it support it? Does it?
That's a great question, by the way. I am a big fan of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, but I also like David Bohm's ideas on the implicate order. And I think the implicate order is essentially there exist infinite potential worlds. And I lost my train of thought. So there exist infinite potential worlds, and only some of them explicate. So essentially, that is not unlike the various possibilities that would exist in a video game, to lend the concept to bring it around the simulation theory. Now, the other possibility is that we're not really a video game with avatars or Sims. We could be a recording. Maybe the last thing the physicists do before they blow up the world is make a recording of everything there ever was in the world. They're fun ideas.
Do you believe that everybody's life has a purpose?
I do. However, I believe our purpose, first and foremost, is that the universe has to do everything. It's got to be everything and do everything. Therefore, we've all got the job of being whatever the universe needs us to be, ourselves, and to live this life. Is there a purpose beyond, from outside this? I believe that experiences of people, who've had near-death experiences indicate that there seems to be a realm of light inhabited by light beings where you go after you die, and this crosses all cultures and religious beliefs, and then you figure out where you're going to go back and do next. So in that sense, our purpose is to do everything, to help God do everything, or the universe, if you will, if you don't want to get religious. So in the broadest sense, yes. Specifically, well, what would be the point of being here if we didn't have a reason? That's how I look at it.
How do you view religion?
I view religion as the opportunistic control mechanism that kicks in when people try to take advantage of spirituality. I think the great unknown is something we can all only really face on an individual basis. Often religions are based on the mystical experiences of their founders, Um, this takes away from the individual achieving their own mystical experience and kind of living secondhand. Um, I think that's a problem, and obviously, it didn't take people in charge long to realize that you can control a lot of people with religious ideas, and people will put up with a great deal of stuff if you convince them that there's a world after this where they're going to get rewarded. They'll put up with a lot, and a lot of times they'll do what you tell them. I'm not saying there isn't a world after this one because I don't know. As I just said, a lot of the people who have come back from near-death experiences claim there is. I'll take their word for it, but I don't know that any group of people hold the keys to my afterlife or anybody else's. I think that a lot of religions have been developed to be a tool to control people.
It was reported on the forum, Lunatic Outpost, that recently scientists have determined that there are billions of worlds like Earth. Do you believe that there's life outside of this planet?
Yeah, I do. Do I believe that life outside this planet, which is a totally different question, visits
Hmm.
Earth? I don't know. Do I believe in UFOs? Sure, I've seen some UFOs. Do I believe in beings that don't quite inhabit our own space time? Sure, I've seen some of those. Um, but do I believe necessarily that there are people from distant worlds that are traveling here? I don't know that that's possible. Um, Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I think, frankly, that the things that we encounter and call UFOs are either civilizations or species that we are unaware of, that we share the planet with, beings from other dimensions, or travelers from the future. I think all of those things are probably more likely than that we're being visited by space aliens. Although I honestly don't know. I've certainly seen many incredible things, and like I said, I try not to lock in any specific belief because once I do that, I stop asking questions. So yes, I believe there's life on other planets. Probably life that we wouldn't even recognize as life. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, frankly, life very close on Mars. I imagine that there's probably a couple of moons with life of some type within the solar system. Uh, Maybe we wouldn't even recognize it as life. So yeah, it's exciting. It really is. There are a lot of
Hmm.
exciting discoveries coming out. Astronomers are doing a lot with their new tools.
If the simulation theory turns out to be correct, things that people perceive as supernatural beings, could they be glitches in the
They
programming?
could
Could
be
they?
glitches. They could be interactions. With avatars of the controllers of the simulation. They could be, like I say, interactions of the controllers of the simulation. They could be beings from embedded simulations. Uh, Anywhere up or down the level interacting with us. Or, as you say, they could be glitches in the recording.
That's really deep. When you get into the possibility of a simulated universe and everything that goes along with it, could it be possible that these things that we call avatars or our being is being watched by some sort of existing entity that is actually, the avatar of something even beyond it that created its simulation? Be a simulation of a simulation of a simulation and so forth.
Exactly.
Um,
And then the
it's
other
just
question
mind
is, are
boggling.
we avatars or are we Sims?
Well, we all seem to be conscious. We all seem to be products of our environment and our collective, our experience.
Well, I
Um,
can speak for myself. I know I'm real, but
It
I
feels that
can't
way.
really talk for you, can I?
It feels like I
Okay, well, I'll trust you.
am. You're writing another story soon, I believe. We briefly talked through a message, and you also mentioned at the beginning of this program that you're working on a new book. What's that about?
Um, I'm actually really excited about it. I've been doing a lot of research. It's actually a Christmas story set in ancient New Jersey, or New Sweden, as it was called back in the time, because the Swedish were the first settlers in New
I
Jersey.
did not know that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
uh, possibly going back as far as Viking times. It's
Uh-huh.
possible. But so I'm doing a little of what should we say, creative history based on real history, and it's going to be called the Yule Siege, and it's set in about 1690, um, Cumberland County, New Jersey, and it's the story of a castle that existed back then, and I'm really looking forward. I'm really just starting to write it. I've pretty much wrapped up the research, but this poor castle will be attacked by pirates, Native Americans, soldiers, wolves, all over the course of a lovely and very snowy, harsh Christmas season. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
I understand you're also involved in another project, which is more on a scientific level.
Yeah, I am writing a book, which I'm almost done, called Stalking the Monad, which deals with John Dee's, as I talked about earlier, uh, book, The Monus Hieroglyphica, or the Hieroglyphic Monad, which basically is both a description of a symbol of the hieroglyphic monad, which is supposedly representative of the most basic building block of the physical universe. Now, Dee had this theory before there was calculus, uh, before there was virtually anything that you could really base a theory on. And he does it with, pictures and symbols and myths. And I find is actually a viable physical model that includes stuff like the holographic universe and holons. Basically, he's talking about a charged fractal vortex rotating around a singularity as being a self-replicating particle that will eventually create the universe. And this particle is in itself the universe. So it even entertains and bridges on the concept of simulation theory as well. But I've translated it's a new translation from Latin, which took me forever. And, I'm trying to explain in layman terms what exactly he's talking about, but he really has ideas that are dazzling. It's a lot of anticipates vortex mathematics and all kinds of discoveries. Dee claimed that once we fully understood what he was talking about, all our sciences would be revolutionized. And I think we're only now getting to the point where we can really get an idea what he was talking about. And that's what I'm trying to do with that book. It's coming slow because I'm a student of physics, but I'm not a physicist. Um, I had several years Latin, but I'm not a Latin scholar. Yeah, I'm working on that, and I hope to have both those books done next year.
You mentioned that you're somewhat of an occultist too, or at least that you have been. Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in?
Yeah, I've absolutely seen it work. Not there's no David Copperfield kind of magic that can really happen, But I believe that our thoughts, when focused properly, can influence events. Um, it's all mind over matter. I think probably when it gets down to it, uh, there's probably more mind than matter. So the possibility of magic uh, makes sense to me. In fact, one of the things I intend to do with the Monas Hieroglyphica book is to show Dee's theories of magic and basically to provide some sort of physical science melding of magic, which is what he tried to do. But I've seen it, it's not the kind of thing where I'm trying to think of a bad example. I can't, but let's think of a good example. If you need some information, I I've seen people do ritual to get in touch with a person, and a week later, they'll get a catalog in the mail. Yeah, that used to happen. Mail catalog. Sorry, I'm showing my age. With a book, a rare book by that person. Is that magic? Nah, maybe it's coincidence. I tend to find that magic is recognizing and optimizing synchronicities. And that's
Hmm.
kind of how I look at it.
And that doesn't conflict with your scientific
No, I don't
view
think
of that.
so. I think there's a lot that consciousness plays a very large role in our, well, it obviously plays a complete role in our perception of the universe. Uh, we don't experience the universe. Our mind interprets our perceptions of the universe. We don't experience it directly. We experience it through mind. Um, I've seen the research. Princeton did research, Princeton University, um, at their pair labs, that pretty much conclusively proves that concentrated mental energy can affect things on the quantum level. And I do experiments myself. There's a device called a Celeron,
Mhm.
which basically comes from, I bought from Princeton University, that allows you to measure. It's basically just a little random generator, but it's based on physical reaction. It's an electron that it produces, and it goes one way or the other. Um, and frankly, during say a magical ritual or even a poetry reading, you really see the numbers. It basically measures the synchronicity field, if you will, and the numbers really go up. So I've seen measurements, and there is some science behind, mind over matter. So I believe that we will maybe one day understand it all, um, but it's science we don't understand. It's focused mental energy and the powers that it can have. It's not what you would call magic.
How do you feel about the recent advancement of technology and how it's affected mankind? Do you believe it's helping us um, to become a better, I guess, to help humanity become better? Or do you believe it's holding us back from our ability to think and reason
I
on
do.
a social?
I think exactly the second thing you said. I think that technology is, we use it, we didn't build it, we don't appreciate it, we take it for granted. Um, I think the more our lives are wrapped up in technology, the less we're wrapped up in reality or the world around us. I think technology distracts us from life, from the natural beauty. Yeah, it's helped us tremendously, and I don't want to go back to living in the 1600s necessarily, um, but I'm addicted to technology just like everyone else is. To say otherwise, I'd be a freaking hypocrite. I love technology, but nonetheless, I think it's probably doomed us, particularly nuclear technology. We built reactors all around the planet that have to be, with spent fuel that needs to be kept cool for, hundreds and hundreds of years, without interruption to the electrical grid. I think that's hubris, um, to the highest level. I think that the CERN and the Large Hadron Collider are hubris on the highest level. We're doing the experiments to find out what happens, but the CERN scientists assure us that they know what happens. Um, the science is not settled. Basically, it's a contest to see if Stephen Hawking is right or if Albert Einstein is right. And if Einstein is right, um, when they reach the proper speed and the heavy enough material in the Large Hadron Collider, they will create a black hole or strangelets, and it probably will destroy the Earth. Um, so that doesn't help us. Uh, but no, I think we've become slaves to luxury and technology, and it's shut down our spiritual and mental capabilities to a really great extent, and we're not doing ourselves any favors. I don't know how or if we could snap out of it. Um, but no, I'm rather a Luddite, I'm afraid. Overall, I think technology's impact on humanity will be shown to be a negative because we'll probably destroy ourselves with it and the planet with us.
Wow, that's pessimistic. I can't necessarily disagree with that. It seems that our advancement of technology is outpacing our social development and our philosophical development too. One thing that alarms me is the numbers of wars that we're in. And it seems to me like wars just seem to pop up all the time now. And nuclear technology, as far as a nuclear bomb, has been around since the mid 1940s.
Right.
It's just my opinion. You can't keep old technology like that under wraps forever. And I'm afraid one day that we will probably see some sort of atomic warfare occur on this planet, probably sooner than later.
Yeah, most likely you're right. I mean, the genie is not going to stay in the bottle. Okay, it was great. Us and the Russians, we mutual assured destruction. Uh, but it's going to be smaller than that, and it's not going to be a state. It's going to be some, rogue organization or something. So it's not going to be easy to pinpoint. It's not going to be possible to stop. Um, yeah, I mean, we let the nuclear genie out of the bottle. He's never going back in. And we're going to have to live with that. Hopefully, we can wise up as a species and, put aside our disagreements and our stupidity, uh, to realize that we're basically on this planet. It's basically a life raft. And probably the best thing to do is to not kill each other and sink the life raft.
What ignites your optimism? Do you see any spark of hope as far as the future of mankind and people?
Well, while we're alive, all of us here, we still have a chance to do something, to maybe to change things. And what does give me optimism, frankly, places like Lunatic Outpost, where you will see people talking about ideas that just most people don't want to even think about. That I think that's really important, and I know that it may sound silly, and it may sound like I'm um, being dishonest, but I honestly believe that conversations on message boards, they might not seem like they can make a difference, but words are the keys to ideas.
I see.
And ideas are what's going to solve our problem in the end. So I think conversations, even, about all kinds of weird things about conspiracies, about alternate realities, about political landscape, about possibilities. Yeah, that gives me hope. And when I see people talking about it, that gives me hope. Because I know I'm not the only person in the world who looks at the world and says, wow, it's kind of effed up. Uh, I think those conversations, yeah, I think every once in a while, uh, that's what gives me hope. I think human beings have incredible power, and still we have incredible potential. Deep down, I think we want to help each other. I think that's our highest priority. I really want to believe that, and maybe I'm being naive, but I've seen people come together after a disaster,
Yes.
and I think that we want to help each other. I think maybe that that's what can save us if we can really have honest conversations, point out the problems, and then maybe work together to find solutions. Sure, we're all still here, so there's still hope. You asked me if I believe that we earlier that if we have a purpose, each of us has a purpose in life. I think I'm going to say that yeah, we do. Our purpose is to make a difference in the world, leave the world a better place than we found it. And frankly, that should be easy for us because it's really effed up. So we don't really have to fix it up that great to make it a little better. Uh, that's what brings me optimism and hope. Where there's life, there's hope.
It sounds like hope's not lost, and I'm going to agree with you on all of what you just said. It seems almost like math. Got to get people to share ideas and communicate with each other, and not be so closed-minded. I want to thank you for coming on the air, and it's been a very, very remarkable interview as far as I'm concerned. I've enjoyed having you on as a guest, and I would like to welcome you back sometime to talk about this when we're both more prepared, when we're both ready to, and be more specific about some things. And I understand there's a lot more you would like to talk about too.
Yeah, I would. I've really enjoyed it, Entropy, and I would look forward to doing it again. And yeah, I have some other stories and stuff to tell, maybe about some occult experiences and some other things that I've researched, and I would love to. I had a great time. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us.